Hey, I'm finally back. So, I was on holiday in Iceland fairly recently and, well, here's some footage. Iceland, a 103,000 square kilometer island, situated in the middle of the Atlantic, about 2,200 kilometers away from America, 1,000 kilometers away from Scandinavia and Europe. This impossible land was, in spite of all odds, discovered and settled by the Norse between 870 and 930 AD. Fortunately, the first settlers didn't just discover a wasteland of smoking volcanoes. They found forests, fjords, rivers, and a fertile black volcanic soil. The distance to the home country also meant that Icelanders could get rid of their king at home.
The Norse Icelanders congregated for 2 weeks during the summer to decide on the social contracts of their society, a commonwealth up until well into the 13th century, when Iceland was returned into the fold under the Norwegian kings.
Fortunately, Icelanders decided to stay on, and today Reykjavik's bustling urban society sits on top of the scant traces of the first settler longhouses, giving us a few clues as to what settler life was like for over 1,000 years ago. Now, archaeology aside, Icelandic authors gave us the sagas with the accounts of the lives of some of these people. Among them were great sailors and explorers, like Eirik, Leif. Okay, let's go back a bit. What I really want to talk about here is actually Viking ships. So, we're going to talk about Viking ships. Let's rewind history and go back a bit and figure out how people could even get to Iceland in the first place. Our story begins with this man, Nicolay Nicolaysen. Nicolay was born in Bergen in 1817 and through a long career became Norway's first state-employed national antiquarian. In 1851, he helped found the Society for Preservation of Ancient Norwegian Monuments. The end of the 19th century was a special time in Norway. Intellectuals and artists were looking all over the country for a fabled past, an old lost cultural identity. Historians looked to the sagas for answers. Artists looked at stave churches and folk tales, while archaeologists, as well as amateurs, started digging into the earth. In 1880, the sons of a local farmer near Sandefjord had begun digging into the Gokstad King's Mound when they found a piece of what was undeniably the stem of a large old ship. Now, cue to Nicolay Nicolaysen, who arrived at the scene with his crew of diggers. The mound, 45 diameters, 5 meters tall, would be a formidable task. Nicolay's preferred excavation methods, derived from his work at the Borre Cemetery, left much to be desired by modern standards, and as his crew dug a shaft directly into the mound, they realized the place had been looted. But as more piles of earth were dug out, Nicolay entered what was the remains of an old burial chamber. They found him lying on his bed, a tall man for his time. His remains, his bones, bore marks of wounds, possibly received at war. They recovered significant artifacts: a harness for horses, a sledge, a cauldron, service, and a board game. This elaborate burial rite had included several sacrificed animals, horses and dogs. Now, these were interesting finds, no doubt, and the rich grave goods gave an idea as to the identity of the buried man. But more importantly to us, this entire burial chamber sat on top of the deck of a rather large Viking ship. This was not entirely unexpected. Ship graves were known. For instance, remains of the much less preserved Tune ship had been found near Fredrikstad in 1867. The mound containing Myklebustskipet was excavated in 1874, although only iron fragments remained. But in 1880, the Gokstad ship became the most spectacular find of them all, measuring 24 meters long, 5 meters wide, 170 deep, with a displacement of about 30 tons, enough space for a crew of about 34. Aside from the broken stems, It was mostly well preserved, complete with anchor, a mast for sails, and shields on the sides. There were also 3 smaller boats buried along with the ship. This sensational find soon made it into the dry, tiny newsprint of the day. Nicolay published a written account with the exact technical details of the entire ship. It would not be long until shipbuilders, archaeologists, and historians began to look at the original and wondered if practical reconstructions could be built and tested on the open seas.
Gokstad-skibet er bygget meget symmetrisk fra side til side, og det er en sjældenhed at se i arkæologiske skibsfund, hvor bordbredderne faktisk varierer rigtig meget, fordi man har udnyttet det materiale, man har haft, og bygget med øjemål og haft et godt overblik over, hvad det er, man laver. Men Gokstad, der kan man se, at det er simpelthen blevet konstrueret så symmetrisk, så det er meget fint håndværk. Det har været nogle meget dygtige bådbyggere, og der har været nogle høje krav, måske fra kongen selv, til at det her skib skulle være rigtig, rigtig lækkert.
But before we look at its builders, let's look at the Viking ship's ancestors, where it all came from. The first evidence of ships are found in a large number of petroglyphs around Scandinavia. From the Bronze Age onwards, they depict ships with crews and cargo. One cannot help but wonder why Bronze Age people were so obsessed with these ships. This has led scholars to believe that there were naval journeys from Scandinavia all the way south to the Mediterranean. But the first tangible piece of evidence is found in the Hjortspring war canoe in Denmark, proof that tribes in Jylland were certainly already acquainted with the construction of larger vessels in the clinker-built fashion that will later characterize Viking ships. At almost 20 meters, this ship could contain a large crew. Reconstructions have also proven it could handle the seas. Now, these ships were paddled, not rowed. From the south, it's worth noting that Romans brought their navies, galleys, up to Britannia and row and sail riverboats up the Rhine. Reconstructions of these Roman riverboats are found at Mainz. Some would say that these aren't at all that different from the later boats that would characterize Scandinavia, and that Germanic mercenaries serving as foderati or auxiliare would know about these boats. But
what have they ever given us in return? The aqueduct?
Now, the much discussed sacrifices at Illerupbog, Jutland, indicate that large armies from northern Scandinavia passed through here, marching south or returning from campaign, and were wiped out in violent fashion. Again, without any real evidence apart from the remains of a few boats, scholars still speculate whether these armies made part of that journey by the seas, and this would have required large navies. A piece of the puzzle lies in the Nydam ship, dated to the 4th century. Evidence of the type of ship that might have been used in the north during this period. Note that this ship was rowed, not paddled, so there was certainly a transition in technology around this time. At Avaldsnes Karmøy, we find evidence that powerful chieftains kept ships and dominated the sea route, possibly as early as the 3rd century AD. A petty king was entombed in Flagghaugen, or the Flag's Mound. This grey mound was 40 meters in diameter and excavated in 1834, containing rich finds, indicating long-distance connections and trade southwards. Having fleets was key to the success of tribes' migrations. For instance, the Vandals contested with the Romans in the Mediterranean, capturing Carthage, plundering Rome, and using adapted naval technology. For the new Germanic warrior elite, expansion by the way of the sea meant conquest, pillage, trade, and lucrative opportunities. Hygelac, king of Geats, also mentioned in the epic poem Beowulf, raided Frisia in the 6th century and died there. The Geats, Angles and Saxons, they used the ship to invade Britannia and settled the Roman province permanently. The elites held ship burials and were entombed into large burial mounds. Invaders brought this right to England, seen in the ship of the famous Sutton Hoo burial mound. The contained Sutton Hoo helmet bears many similarities to helmets found at Vendel, Sweden, where we also find ship burials with associated grey goods, giving this period its name. Remains of the 18 meters long Kvalsund ship of Western Norway was found in a bog in 1920. The materials and later reconstructions gave us an indication of what a proto-Viking ship might have looked like, minus any definite proof for sails. Back at Avaldsnes, the Storhaug and Grønhaug burial mounds were excavated over 100 years ago, around the time of Gokstad and Oseberg, and in them were found ships ranging from 15 to 20 meters in length. Now, these finds have been dated to the end of the 8th century, but the Oseberg ship remains the earliest definite proof for sails on a Viking ship, although sails must have been in use earlier, on smaller boats for instance, before they ended up on large vessels, as sails of this size were probably very expensive. A proper Viking ship had the clinker-built hull, a powerful yet shallow keel, a raised stern and bow, only one mast but with a large square sail. It was deceptively simple, but remarkably fast, flexible and sturdy, able to navigate coastlines, up rivers, and even the open seas. The clinker-built ship or boat would have already have had hundreds of years of continuity and refinement. The innovation that made them perfect for the Vikings was the adoption of the sail. By then they had become highly adaptive vessels for travel and maneuvering. Although some ships, such as Oseberg, were prestige vessels and probably rare and few between, ships such as the Gokstad ship and the Skurdelev ship from Denmark gave evidence of the knarr, a more common cargo vessel.
Saga Farman, først så jo skipet da, det en kopi av Gokstad-skipet. Gokstad-skipet det ble funnet på slutten av 1800-tallet. Et ganske tidlig vikingskipfunn inne i Gokstadkilen i Viksfjord. Og det var jo et område, det jo Kaupang og et gammelt område for vikinger. Og det var et skip som var funnet sunket i fjorden, altså så det ikke et gravskip. Det en av få, kanskje det eneste, tror jeg, i Norge som funnet av vikingskip som ikke gravskip. Den bredere, den har høyere skrog, ikke sant? Det skal være favne mer last, da. Det et frakteskip.
Such ships were built to handle the seas more efficiently and relied mostly on sails, meaning smaller crews. This type of ship could bring people, livestock, food, goods and cargo wherever there was access to rivers and the sea, making it the key instrument of the establishment of Viking trade towns and networks all over northern Europe. But the knarr would also leave all worlds behind. It was the key for the Norse to sail, explore and settle westwards in the North Atlantic, Iceland, Greenland and Vinland. Cargo vessels aside, the Viking longship was a formidable warship. The military opportunities inherent in this technology meant that many chiefs could become sea kings, restless warlords whose power lay solely at sea along the coasts, with the combined power of their fleets, their crews, experience and knowledge of navigation, combat and raiding. Many of them were sea kings. They had a large army but no land, only those who never slept under a suited roof, nor sat drinking by the corner of the hearth, could by right call themselves sea kings. Which begs the obvious question, who exactly built their ships, and how? Aside from the archaeological evidence of their craft, there are relatively few accounts of the lives of Viking shipbuilders. Olav Tryggvason's saga mentions one Thorberg Skavhog, who was promoted to master builder after altering and improving Olav's legendary longship, Ormen Lange. Well, then the king almost kills him for it, but the king was a bit of a psycho, and it's a long story. So we can assume that boat building must have been innate knowledge to a great deal of people, but boat building takes time. I can't help but speculate that just like with the later medieval state churches, there must have been a professional class of boat builders who, for instance, oversaw the construction of large, prestige vessels. So I decided I had to travel and talk to someone who was actually still doing the thing that boat builders have been doing for centuries.
Here I am driving out of Sogndal in Western Norway to a special place which lies way out of my local hoods. And it's very well known for its active boat building tradition. Now, that being said, this film is just taken a long time to complete, and you can see probably like my hairs are graying. In the meantime, I've got a kid. I moved to a new place. There's just been a ton of stuff going on in the meantime in my life. So yeah, not only in terms of space, but in time. This has been a journey as well for me. If you do enjoy it, please help the channel out, and yeah, obviously subscribe and drop a like or a comment if you like this kind of content. Yeah, and back to the video.
Ja, du nå kommet på Bjørkedalen på Sunnmøre. Og jeg heter Ottar Kåre Bjørkedal, oppvoksen her i bygda. Og ja, her har det vært drevet med båtbygging i hundrevis av år bakover. Bare i min slekt så har det vært i alle fall tilbake til 1600-tallet. Enda tidligere også, for det stod nå i sagaene at det kom inn til Volda her, kongene, og fikk reparert skipene sine i alle fall. Så det var sikkert båtbygging allerede på 1000-tallet. Der yngstebroren min, og der eldstebroren min, der jeg, og der faren vår, så lærte oss alt dette styret her.
For båtdraging, det liksom, da må alle komme og hjelpe til?
Ja, da var det var uskrevet lov at når en kvann lyste til båtdraging, da måtte en kvann, ja, minst en mann fra hver gard møte opp for å hjelpe til. Så dette spesielt, en måte å bygge båt på som var gjort bare her på Sunnmøre.
Bare på Sunnmøre?
Eneste plassen, det her. Og så, ja, det var snakk om en plass i Kina eller noe sånt. Det har ikke lignende med.
Kina.
Så kan folk lure på hvorfor bygge båtene her så langt inn i land, og så måtte ta jobben med å drakse dem til sjøs. Så 6-7 kilometer til sjøen her. Men det tror vi stort sett på grunn av denne veldig gode fôrskogen som vi har her. Så har blitt tatt en vare på for å kunne brukes til trebåtbygging. Det var nå det de kom til, at det var enklere å drage et ferdig produkt av en båt opp til en viss størrelse, opp til for eksempel 40-45 fot. Nå for tida så blir det nå oftest bygd etter tegninger og sånt, men det som var vanlig her rundt om i bygda, da når de virkelig drev med båter, det er noe snakk om det at de bygde opp i kanskje over 300 båter på en vinter. Måten de gjorde det på, det var kun ut ifra øye og på øyemål og sånt. De fikk bestilte seg en båt som skulle være så og så mange fot og så breid og ha de egenskapene, og så var det opp til båtbyggeren å bygge dem. Så det var kun gjort etter båtbyggeren sine evne og måter å gjøre det på.
Ottar Kåre took part in the reconstruction of the Myklebust ship, probably one of the largest Viking ships they found traces of.
Og sånn som Myklebust-skipet som vi bygde på Norwegian, så var vi nå 6 mann som bygde det på 3 vintre. Men det de sa, de som hadde greie på det, det var det at det gjerne tok 100 mann i 10 år å bygge en sånn båt. Den tida. Det har vært her i gården, og vi brukte det nå på hele Myklebust-skipet.
Ok, så det noe du bare har arvet, som du bare...
Ja da, så er det til her.
Og det brukes til å klinke med?
Ja, klinke med. Når du har fått åt et bord, og så setter du til naglene, eller saumen, slå på roa, og så setter en knipen dine faste på bordet, så at det treffer akkurat der. Det at vi klarer å bygge sånne båter nå, det nå egentlig mye mindre bragd enn det de gjorde da den tiden. Men de måtte være voldsomt mange, og de måtte være flinke hver i seg, og har sikkert sine fagfelt der de noen drev med det som har med metall å gjøre, og andre drev med boring og med innved og forskjellig, og også tauverk og alt som har med segl og rigg å gjøre. Og så dynner der nedover. Og så setter en sparre oppi der for å trykke det ut.
For å trykke det ut, ja?
Ja, og få fasong.
Ok, ja.
Så mye båter som de måtte ha hatt. Tenker på det, måtte være både voldsomt flinke og forferdelig mange som klarte å få det til. Så da
har du liksom det utapå, ja?
Ja. Og så ikke det nok bare å klinke med det flate. delen sånn. Jeg må bruke pennen, som vi sier. For liksom... Og så til slutt runder en de til. Og det med å klinke opp igjen, så er de nå ihop, eller når det da krymper for eksempel, eller båten begynner å leke til at veden har gitt etter litt grann. Da det egentlig bare å holde på. Spesielt da under vikingtida, det noe helt utrolig at de klarte å skaffe så mye jern og fikk smi ihop saum til et stort vikingskip, vet du. Generasjonen før meg, de måtte nå smi og smi saum som regel. Inntil det var råd å få tak i kjøpesaum, så det heter. Så smed, det en av, og også skogsarbeider er veldig viktig. Et tre, det mer bare et tred. Det ikke, og det skal kappes ned og brukes til bygningsmaterialer. Det egentlig det eneste folk tenker på når det gjelder skog. Men når jeg skal bruke det til båtbygging, så det andre egenskaper en ser på. Bruker mer hele tredet, både kvister og rota. Par 300 år.
Par 300 år gammel furu?
Ja, det tror jeg.
Det er bra at man kan bruke liksom hele treet da, nesten, ikke sant?
Ja, det er det. Nå vet du, når de skoger på moderne skogsdrift, så det nå kun stammer. De kanskje kapper det her oppe i sånn farmen-opplegg med å ikke være vant til å bøye seg ned.
Nei, bare rett over.
Det å sage i denne. Da det likeste på treet, det står nå igjen.
Det er det beste delen av treet.
Ja, det er noe det. Det er noe der det blir kubikk av treet, og ikke oppe i toppen. I vinter så har vi hatt et prosjekt der Høgskolen i Volda, Kystlaget og 4H har gått ihop om å få penger til å lage et kurs der en kan få litt innføring i båtbygging og har bygd 2 båter nå i vinter, møringsbåt og en bjørkedalsfæring. Grunnen til det er det at jeg er omtrent den yngste av båtbyggerne som er igjen og har hatt det til delvis yrke. Det er nå liksom for å prøve å få litt mer blest om det, og at det kanskje andre kan lære litt og ha litt kunnskap om. Men det er akkurat dette der med å ta dette stedet og begynne å skal bygge båt. Da kreves det at det er det som et marked for det. Så det er nå det som er det store problemet. Men klart det visst at vi enda er gjenlevende, sagt, og de har fått en litt innføring i det, så er det ikke noe problem at en kan fortsette etterpå. Men akkurat nå så ser det egentlig litt svart ut, og har gjort det i noen år.
Okay, that's kind of good and bad at the same time. I do realize that we are in dire straits if we are to keep the traditional boat building craft for future generations. Anyways, time for me to head back from this beautiful part of Norway.
Oh, blow the men down, goodies, blow the men down.
It was the continuity in traditional boat building that made it possible for archaeologists, historians and Viking ship enthusiasts to test their ideas and hypotheses about the Viking Age in recreating the ship for long journeys. One of the very first was Captain Magnus Andersen, who sailed a locally built replica of Gokstad, or Viking, from Norway across the Atlantic to the Chicago World Fair in 1893. The voyage across the Atlantic took about 4 weeks. It was a great success and proved that the Viking ship reconstructions were able to cross entire oceans effectively. Once in Chicago, Viking attracted considerable attention. Magnus had arrived with a controversial claim, the idea that America had first been discovered by Europeans under Leif Erikson, before we had the archaeological definite proof of Norse colonization at Newfoundland. Incidentally, Viking never returned to Norway. It remains landlocked in Geneva, Illinois, and is open to visitors to this very day.
Skibet er jo helt håndgribelige arkeologiske, fysisk ting, men håndteringen af det, hvordan du byggede skibet, værktøjssporene, hvilket værktøj du anvendte til at bygge det, kan vi jo udlede af de spor, der er på det originale træ. Sådan er der også nogle slidspor i huller, nogle dimensioner på huller af tovværk, der har holdt masten for eksempel, eller klamper, der har siddet der, hvor du har suret dine fastgørelsespunkter fra sejlet. Sådan nogle ting, dem kan vi udlede af at bruge skibet. Så alt det, der ligger skjult i, hvordan arbejdede mennesket dengang i vikingtiden med skibet, det kan vi lære af eksperimentel arkeologi.
Viking ship reconstructions and experimental archaeology gives us a legitimate means of testing our ideas and hypotheses about old history. But while they sometimes give us unexpected answers, these methods will not be worth much in the future without access to the original materials. So how can we keep the past alive? Based off the original ships. Back in 1880, when the Gokstad ship was out in the open, entirely new problems of preservation arose. Gokstad was initially placed in an old shed in the university garden in Christiania. Attention to Gokstad waned when the spectacular Oseberg ship was found and excavated by the Swedish professor Gabriel Gustafsson. The archaeologists now had several Viking ships in need of a proper museum, along with the other Viking artifacts. A museum was built at Big Day, according to Professor Gustafsson's vision, and first opened to the public in 1926. Gokstad was moved to a new wing of the museum in 1932. Now, the wood had been soaked in a special preservative salt, but it made the original materials incredibly brittle and fragile. By the early 2000s, conservators were sounding all the alarm bells. Unfortunately, there was a lot of committing, experting and politicking, and there was a catastrophic proposal to move all the ships to Bjørvika. This proposal was finally scrapped, and it was instead decided to build an extension on the old museum in the old location, and well, the work is still going on, but when the new exhibition opens, it will be in a state-of-the-art museum that is finally due in, well, 2027, I think. Almost 150 years after the excavation of Gokstad. I mean, it says something about the quality of the ships, the fact that they're even still around. Nicolay's find in 1880, Oseberg and the other myriad of ships found before and since, leaves us here, as always within history and archaeology, with more questions than answers. Now, I don't really like these sort of open-ended, obvious conclusions to historical documentaries, but these 1,000-year-old ships, they really are a mess. They intertwine with historical events in the 19th century, the 20th century and the modern day, the constant need to preserve them, the additional need to preserve the reconstructions made of them, and the dwindling fortunes of the traditional boat-building craft behind it all.
Det er nok spesielt med en trebåt framfor andre sorter båter. Det tror jeg er grunnen til at det bør tas vare på. Også tradisjonen med å bygge det. Det er for sent. Etter alle båtbyggerne er døde og skal begynne på nytt igjen, da er det et stort arbeid. Men hvis de får det litt inn og får være med og prøve, la meg de som kan, så viser det seg at de aller fleste klarer om ikke bygge en helt båt alene, men i alle fall få til det. Være med og bygge en båt.
Still, there is hope. They continue to inspire people to learn traditional crafts or learn seamanship.
Fast. Fri. Så vil det helt at ta med vikingskip og seiler det helt ned til Istanbul i 2023?
Ja, det er jo en prosess altså, som har vært der, en drøm da, om å dra til Istanbul, som er en spesiell by i vikingens øyemed, da, altså Konstantinopel. Og videre i historien der, så Miklagard kalte jo vikingene byen, den store byen. Og de vikingene var jo der for om lag 1000 år siden, og de har kommet tilbake da, og gjøre en sånn reise med et vikingskip. Og her fra Norge og Vestfold, det har liksom vært stort.
New finds, new methods and new research also keeps altering the way we view the ship's impact on our history. For example, the Gokstad ship, the first proper Viking ship find in Norway in over 100 years. At least in my mind, until more finds and studies are published, the Viking ship journey has its natural conclusion here in Iceland. Why? Well, it's because of what it enabled people to do, to travel, to sail over the horizon, to seek new fortunes away, from the old world.
Vikingeskibene på Bygdøy og på andre museer, altså også i Roskilde, der har vi 5 vikingeskib. Det er vigtigt, at vi kan se, hvor det er, vi kommer fra, for at forstå den udvikling, vores samfund har gennemgået, og for at forstå, hvem vi egentlig er selv som mennesker. Fordi vi er jo ikke født i det 20. århundrede eller det 19. århundrede med al den kundskab, som man har brug for, bare fordi at vi er født i en udvikling. Vi står på skuldrene af det, som vikingerne stod for af udvikling. Og når vi ser, hvad de har formået, så må vi jo blive meget imponeret over den ekspertise, de har haft. For de har også vidst en masse ting, som vi ikke ved i dag, som vi har vidensoverført kun på grund af dem, kan man sige. Og de fuldskala rekonstruktioner, som vi bygger, som vi siger, det er eksperimentel arkæologisk forskning, det er jo også en formidling af vores kulturarv. Og hvis du ikke kender din kulturarv, og ligesom kan forstå ved at se på noget og afprøve noget, hvor det er, du kommer fra, så ved du ikke rigtig, hvem vi er. Altså, så bliver man bare så egoistisk og tænker, vi kan alt, fordi vi har en computer. Det kan vi ikke.
Okay, that's been me done. Another epic voyage across time and space. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Click like and subscribe if you did. And off I go into the distance while I muse philosophically on the meaning of life. Goodbye.